Good morning, happy Tuesday. Welcome to another edition of Observations of an American Living in Germany. Well, my wife and I went to Berlin Thursday through Sunday. Had a great time. Berlin is a very big city. Of course, we didn't get to see the whole thing, but we stayed in a hotel that straddled where the wall used to be. We stayed in the Marriott. The front of the hotel where the lobby is was in what used to be West Berlin, and the restaurant area was what was East Berlin. Got to go to Checkpoint Charlie. I put some footage in videos I took while I was up there. I posted them to YouTube. But yeah, we took the train to get there. We left Wiesbaden. We got the city bus to the Bahnhof, then took a commuter train to Frankfurt, and then took the ICE train to Berlin. And I think it made 3 or 4 stops along the way. The speed of the train got as high as 250 kilometers per hour, which is about 155 miles an hour. So it was not a bullet train, but definitely faster than any train in the United States that I've ever been on or heard of. The rail system in Germany seems to be designed for efficient movement of passengers, whereas in the United States, the rail system is designed mostly for freight. And the freight trains are much longer than they are in Germany. And they don't go as fast, but they contain many more cars. And in the United States, we have Amtrak, which is a government-owned railroad. I don't think they've ever made a profit, but it's hard to run Amtrak the way the German train system does because Amtrak has to use freight train tracks. And there are times when the Amtrak trains have to pull over on the siding to let a freight train go by because the freight train is too long to fit on the siding. So it's not really a dig on Amtrak. It's just the system is set up so much differently. But nevertheless, we rode in second class, regular coach, cattle class, whatever you call it, on the way up. It was fine. We had there's 2 seats on each side, and we had one where there was a little table in front of us, so it was kind of nice with a laptop. And I didn't realize it, but I didn't even give it much thought. We were sitting backwards, so we were watching where we had been as we went by, and I didn't get ill or anything. Sometimes when I was a kid, sitting in a station wagon in the rear-facing seats, it gets you nauseous on a long trip, but it wasn't that way on a train. It was quite smooth. They had a dining car. I didn't eat anything. We brought our own food. I didn't buy anything from the dining car except a bottle of pop. But I think the train had about 15 cars on it, I'm guessing. And when you go from one train to another, the doors automatically open and close. It's totally seamless. And the bathrooms on the train were nice. And when you pull into a stop, it seems like they're very efficient. They pull in, the doors open, then it makes a chime and the doors close and off you go. I saw where we went through where the border used to be. Back I was a kid, and we went to East Germany and West Berlin on what used to be called the duty train. We traveled at night. It was for American military people here, but you could see where some of the border checkpoints used to be. We went up to, I think, Göttingen or something like that. We ended up going through Wolfsburg, and on the way home, we came down through Erfurt. And then one other town, I can't remember the name, but we came down a different way than when we went up. So we got to see some pretty scenery. I don't know what the German government does for the railroads as far as keeping animals off the track. I know there are some areas where there was a wall along the side of the tracks. And it doesn't seem like they had very many crossings, at grade crossings, where there are cars there. I mean, there were a few, but not that many. I think they really went out of their way not to have too many crossings over roads where cars had to stop and where they had gates and things like that. Um, we really took an upgrade to first class on the way back. And that was a little nicer, a little more room. They have Wi-Fi on the trains. It worked okay if you were doing email and maybe pictures, but I tried to stream some YouTube and it kept buffering. I guess there were too many people using the internet, so the Wi-Fi wasn't that great. But the trains were clean. It seems like everybody knew what they were doing. Uh, the conductor came around and he scanned our tickets when we were on the way up, but on the way back, I don't know how they knew it, but we didn't have a printed ticket. We did it online, and my wife had it in her phone. But they didn't ask for our tickets on the way back, which was kind of weird. Maybe they know by your seat number. I have no idea. I'm not an expert at German rail travel, but I was I was highly impressed. And when we were in Berlin, we got around on I think it was the S-Bahn and the U-Bahn, like a subway. Um, I noticed that I was doing some looking around on the internet about the wall. And by the way, we did go to visit. We saw where the wall was. There's still part of it standing. And there's one street that's still blocked off. But it was pretty amazing to go to the Berlin Wall Museum, which is right across from the segment. It's about 100 meters long where the wall is still actually up. And that was interesting times. I was here in Germany as a kid in the 70s, and we took the train to Berlin. And then I was here in 1981 as a teenager, and we actually drove to Berlin when my dad was stationed in Garmisch. So I got to see the old East Germany and everything twice. Uh, in Berlin, there's a place called the Trabi Museum. The Trabant was a car made, I believe, in Zwickau. It was the East German people's car, I suppose. They always remind me, when I look at them, they remind me of an old Fiat, like a Fiat Brava, slightly, the profile of the car. But they had a Trabi World place, and they had a Trabi Museum. And they had a whole bunch of Trabants in there, and you could even sit in them. They had one where you could get in it and sit in it to see what it was like. To say that the cars are stripped down is an understatement. But if you lived in East Germany during the 70s or 80s, and it was either a Trabant or no car, you were probably pretty happy to have one. And they seem to be made of solid metal. 23 horsepower engine, two cycle, two cylinder. It was like 600cc engine. You'd have a hard time getting out of your own way. But now the Trabant has a following. They've got a huge fan club. They have a meet where people get together. I thought that was kind of interesting. Reminds me of when we were in Croatia. There's a company over there that does tours in a Yugo. So what better to do than use a communist car in a capitalist venture? So I found that very interesting. There was we saw the Brandenburg Gate. They had it all lit up. They put the Israeli flag up there, and something it said like today is or today is never again or something like that is what the translation said, and I believe it was to pay tribute to the people who lost their lives in the recent attack against Israel by Hamas, and it also had to do with the anniversary of Kristallnacht when we were up in Berlin, and they had the light shining up there with the Israeli flag, and there were some pro-Hamas demonstrations going on in Berlin, but we didn't see it where we were. It was a pretty big city, but we got a lot of walking done. We went up in the Berlin Dome, the Berliner Dome, in a church, 297 steps or something like that. That was a long way up. And then we went up in that TV tower where you're about, I'm guessing, 600 or 700 feet above Berlin, and you can look down and see everything. So we got to see that. It was very, very interesting. Berlin was not at all what I expected, and I was surprised at how smoothly the traffic flowed. The traffic in Berlin was getting around better than it does in Wiesbaden, and it's a much bigger city. I don't know if they have the lights timed right. I'm not sure what it was, but we got there on a Thursday night, left on a Sunday mid-morning, and the traffic seemed to be flowing quite smoothly. There were no jam-ups anywhere. Now, I realized I was only in part of the city, but it seemed like they did something right. There are a lot of universities and museums up there, and Berlin was very clean. Now, I'm sure it's got dirty areas like every other city, but I didn't see a lot of trash lying around. So, hats off to the Germans. Hats off to the Bürgermeister in Berlin. They did a good job with everything. Plenty of restaurants, good food, and the Berlin train station is really cool. I was reading about some of the old networks of the rail network, and they had train tracks that went into East Germany and back out into West Germany. So the East German government blocked off the stations. They called them ghost stations, so the trains never stopped. That must have been kind of weird back in the day. And the tribute to the people who died trying to escape communism was pretty sad too. They had pictures of everybody. I think it was like 188 people or something like that. There's probably a lot more they didn't know about. But yeah, Germany, thankfully capitalism won. The funny thing is, when you're at Checkpoint Charlie, right at the communist border, right behind you is a McDonald's. So I guess that's a symbol of capitalism. But if you never knew about the history of Berlin, you wouldn't even be able to tell the city was divided unless you went to that street that's still blocked off, where the section of the wall is still standing. I'm very glad that there's a lot of pictures and memorials and things like that, so that people never forget how horrific that was for the country. Imagine being liberated from the Third Reich after you're living in East Germany and you get liberated by the Soviet Union, but then you're stuck with communism for another 45 years. Talk about a Faustian bargain. But yeah, we're back to Wiesbaden. Everything's back to normal, and it's a nice, very chilly day out here. So I've got to try and wash the car and run a few errands, and then pick up my wife when she gets off work. So everybody have a good day. Sorry I went a little long, but that was a really exciting trip to Berlin. I really am glad that I got to go up there. It's changed since 1981. Yeah, that's when you realize how old you're getting. But anyway, peace. Tschüss.